You're probably wondering, why is an artist on a channel about art and how art can help talking about video games? I have a very broad definition of art, thanks in part to this guy, Duchamp. If a urinal can be a work of art, why can't Mario? But to dive into it a little bit deeper, for those art snobs out there, the fact is that MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, has collected video games into its private collection. So if the standard is something of institutionalization and certification, then that bar has been met, and we have to agree that video games are art. If you go beyond that, though, and you think, maybe these institutions are run by fools, which is, I suppose, up for debate, I think video games can still qualify as art. First of all, they have visuals, they have music, they have aesthetics, they use line, form, and color and texture. They incorporate technology, they tell stories, they are obviously interactions of a bunch of collective artists' effort. And together, they form cohesive things, much like a symphony, a concert, a concerted effort of unique individual forms and voices coming together for the sake of the service of the whole. So you might ask, well, video games are just for fun though. They're just entertainment. Why on earth would we consider them in the same manner as we might consider a painting by Rembrandt? Why on earth did the MoMA do so? So if you take my broad definition, which I have in other lectures and videos, but something along the lines of art is when material becomes artificially meaningful. Is there valuable meaning to be found in video games? My favorite example of a stupid video game is the cow clicker game, which is exceptional in its absurdity. There'll be a link to a video for that whole saga. But some games are obviously dumb, and they are designed to steal your money or get your attention or do all kinds of stupid things that aren't that meaningful. Flappy Bird was not that meaningful of an experience, aside from, I guess, telling the world that you were really good at tapping a screen. But there are some other games, like Minecraft can help us learn how to tell stories through the adventure mode and the creation of your own adventure mode. Mario Maker can help you understand how to become a better designer. RPGs that explore good and evil, like Knights of the Old Republic or Skyrim, can help us understand how should we use our power wisely. And of course, this is done through the embodying or the taking on of the character of the audience. The audience gets to participate in the creation or the telling of the story in a unique manner. Everyone's experience of the video game is slightly different, and so it's a strange amalgamation of art experience that is both private and public and gets at different things. Does that mean that all video games should be collected by the MoMA? No. But some of them are really unique. Before I dive into what I think is a very unique video game, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I want to talk about one thing in particular, and that is the hazards of video games, specifically addiction. It's really easy to get wrapped up in the serotonin boosts that virtual achievements give. Video games are great, but at some point you need to grow up and face real monsters, not just Ganon. That's the big bad evil guy in the Zelda games, by the way. This is not a unique problem of video games. This is not a reason to say, that's why my kids shouldn't play these. That's why this work of art, or this art form, is not worthy of my attention. After all, Shakespeare warns about the danger of too many plays in Hamlet. Don Quixote warns about the dangers of only reading books and never experiencing life. Plato, for God's sakes, argues that we shouldn't even write, even though that seems to come in the form of writing. I think the same is true for video games. Yes, of course there's hazards if you get addicted to video games, but that's an individual's prerogative to figure out how to tackle that temptation. With that said, let's take a look at The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of the ways you can begin to interact with a work of art, any type of work of art, is to ask the question, what is this? I like to do this in my classes with students, and especially when you're looking at contemporary art, sometimes you literally are intrinsically asking that question because what you're looking at is confusing. If I say, what is this? I can describe the video game in very broad terms, especially for those of us who are not very interested in video games. Hopefully this description will not bore you. At its core, Breath of the Wild is a game where the player controls a hero who gains power through a series of challenges in order to fight the big bad evil guy and save the princess. Sounds kind of cliche, kind of Strange that this story can be told over and over and still get many people's attention and generate millions and millions of dollars. In art speak, this is the subject of the artwork. Once you understand the subject of an artwork, you can start to understand the reality of the depth of the question, what is this really about? What is this thing in front of me? In art speak, that would be called, what is the content of the artwork? What is the difference between subject and content? Let's look at that pipe image that I've played in many of my videos. Its subject, as in the material I'm looking at, is a painting of a pipe and a French sentence that translated says, "This is not a pipe." The content is the implications of this subject, that paintings are illusions and you should not mistake them as representations or representations, but rather as things themselves. So, Breath of the Wild is a classic role-playing game. You start off weak, you get stronger, you beat the biggest challenge in the game. What is the content? This is the part that I'm particularly interested in, the reason why I would highlight this video game. Because the subject aligns with most games, and the content is where a game truly starts to transcend and become deeply meaningful. To answer the question of content for Zelda, we need to dive a bit into the lore of the game. But trust me, folks who hate this sort of thing and hate the ridiculous fantasies of these video game worlds, I will not get really nerdy for you. The land of Hyrule has a problem. A big bad evil guy is creating clockwork bad guys who are corrupting all of nature. You can see this as like machines terrorizing nature. They run on ancient power and literally destroy the light and beauty of the lush natural world. Players embody Link, who must save the world and restore the rightful princess to the throne. This sounds pretty normal, I guess. Weirdly enough, there's a magical symbol in Hyrule, the Triforce. The bad guy represents power, the princess is wisdom, and the hero is courage. So courage must tame power in order to put wisdom back on the throne. Courage starts off small and has to grow by learning how to tame the desolation of the desert, how to walk on water, to climb the volcano and be transformed in the fires, and eventually to fly into the air. Kinda sounds like another familiar story, doesn't it? All the while, our hero is growing stronger and learning about how, when the princess was young, she was also young in wisdom. The player embodies this same experience as when you start in the game, you don't understand it, you don't know its layout, you don't know its mechanics, and you have to slowly discover them and grow yourself in order to progress in the game. The princess went seeking the secrets of defeating the ancient power and was unable to figure out how to hold back the corruption. She was a bit prideful and reckless, and now, after 100 years of captivity, only proper courage can save her and tame this ancient power. Link will re-link the proper order of the Triforce. That's a good story. The video game lets players explore the many ways to achieve this end, from collecting seeds from the Tree of Life to carry more tools, finding pieces of life and overcoming challenges of combat, puzzles of wits, and puzzles of dexterity. To more deeply nuance our understanding of the subject of the game, there are two main resources in the game, stamina and health. These represent the amount of suffering you can bear and the amount of hope you have, so you can hold on longer. Altogether, the subject and the content come together into an interactive experience where this idea of proper wisdom ruling is explored all throughout the game in different mechanics. Whether we notice it or not, that is what the players are trying to achieve as they progress through the game. This is the epic hero's journey. It's why the hero has to go to the desert and to the water and to the mountain and to the sky. He has to dive into all of the most dangerous places in order to grow and harness that power so that he might take on the ultimate evil. My problem comes down to this weapon here, the Master Sword. At the root of the Deku Tree, that is, the Tree of Life in this game, there is a sword stuck in a stone. Again, another Christian narrative illusion. You need the right amount of health, or hearts, to pull it out of the stone. That is, you need to be able to bear suffering to wield the sword, just like Arthur, just like Christ. In the mechanics of the game, all the weapons break eventually except this sword. If you use it on lesser enemies, it loses its charge and you can reuse it after 10 minutes or something like that. This is where my issue lies. I don't care about the game mechanics, I care about the artwork's content. This is the sword that should master power. It should only work for the one who can bear the most suffering. In previous Zelda games, the Master Sword was only special if you had full health. I think this should return to the upcoming sequel to Breath of the Wild, because think about what that means. If the hero is wounded, he's not a master. The Master Sword should stop working for the player who is not already the master over the evil forces of the world of Hyrule. Conceptually, as in aligning with myths and fairy tales and folk tales and all the symbols of the past, it is only the true hero who has mastered power who can pave the way for true wisdom to sit on the throne. The highest rule is this: courage must tame power so that wisdom can rightly rule. If courage is weak, power will beat it. I guess at its core, we should make video games hard again.